All right, folks, welcome on back here this Thursday afternoon, shortly after 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And of course, this time of the day, welcome on back here for our afternoon meeting. Of course, this Thursday, October 28th, for recording purposes. Great to see Norman, great to see Alan, great to see Leda, Gary, and all of our students otherwise live inside the Cyber Group room. And again, if you're joining us on Facebook Live or YouTube, welcome on back. Actually, first, let me do this. There we go. I had to unplug my headset, replug it in, make sure that we're good to go officially. But let's start off with the stock on the screen here, the HCWB stock. And then from there, we'll recap the morning and early afternoon that was. And then, of course, as always, we'll rescan the market from there, see what else we got for us going into the market close. So to begin first, I mean, you see the stock there, the HCWB, but I wanted to pull up the news for us here first. So the news that came out, it came out at 7:30 Eastern Time this morning. HCWB, they ended up receiving FDA clearance to proceed with its phase 1B clinical trial for immunotherapeutic, blah, 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 for pancreatic cancer. Sounds like a great headline. You would like to think for a stock coming off that type of news, you would expect a big pop, nice run. Well, we got it. It ended up popping after the market opened up. But man, was this thing volatile. This thing was like just out of whack. I mean, ended up spiking up and pulled back down. And when a stock does that fast, you typically expect for it to be game over. You expect for it to just over time only dump back down lower. Well, it ended up picking right back up, going right back up to that resistance level off of 7. Well, you would expect at that point, if it's not going to tank here and if it's actually going to pop and run up, well, hey, it's got to break resistance. It's got to make a new high and run up even higher. No, unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Ended up just holding 7 completely perfectly. And then from there, over time, I guess there was one more jump up here. But at this stage now, if it's not going to break higher, then we know what's going to happen to it, folks. So I'm not going to put this HCWB stock on the main list for the afternoon. I guess unless if there's a miracle and this thing pops up by the end of this meeting, then I'm going to pass on it. But alongside the HCWB, we did really well this morning on a couple of the other trades here. We'll just go down the morning watch list first, but the IFRX still, well, number 2 on the gainers list, up just about 40%. This stock took a while to get going. It does not look like the best looking chart either, but it is to say once the market opened up and after we saw the pullback, well, it ended up holding support really nicely right off of 365, 370-ish here. And then from there, really, once it started to move up and over 4, I was able to thankfully jump in this stock with one of our students, Cliff, in a coaching session. He brought it to my attention actually right when it was beginning to perk back up towards 4 here. I think this was the time. And I jumped in. I mean, it took a while and I almost got stopped out. I got a couple pennies away from getting stopped, but it didn't. Thankfully, it rebroke over 4. And once it did there, the rest was history. This stock ended up making a beautiful move for us and unfortunately made a false breakout, but went from 4 all the way up towards 5, broke over 5. And well, that's where we had the false breakout. So you can see it ended up coming right back down, right off the pre-market high there. And right back down it goes. So again, for the afternoon, not as keen to put this on the main list, but a nice cheap stock that we ended up doing pretty well on, at least from earlier today. The LCID stock, Lucid Motors. So Lucid's a stock that we are pretty familiar with just looking at the daily chart. Really, you could just see from the beginning of this calendar year, that's when we ended up trading it off the first real short squeeze that it had. Let's see what the news is here on this stock. I didn't actually check the news this morning on this. So Lucid shares trading higher amid momentum in the EV names and in anticipation of Lucid Air deliveries, which I'm not really too familiar about. Air deliveries, I don't know. But looks like that, alongside just the fact that it's a meme stock or, Reddit stock, Wall Street bet stock otherwise. Man, this thing exploded. Ended up running up perfectly from 28 to 34. And then it didn't really take that much longer for it to break higher. But, even at that point, you'd expect a false breakout. You'd expect at some point for this thing to kind of come back the other way. It didn't, at least at the time. It kept going all the way up towards near 40, and then from there it came back down. So, at some point this thing's got to, begin to pull back, retrace, make a false breakout. If anything, well, it moved all the way up and didn't false break, but it ended up holding resistance perfectly under 40 and came back down from there. So granted, hey, this stock's very volatile. I say that, in a good way. It has a very liquid order book, albeit the spread's pretty, up and down. This is definitely more of a level 4 stock, I'd say, for Felix, for Gene, Wendy, all of our students, really, I'm talking to here. If you did well on this stock earlier today, then you should be trading it. If you've done well on this stock much more often than not over the last year, then I'm sure that you're going to be more focused on this stock. If you're a new student joining Cyber Trading University that is still pretty uncomfortable with using our trading strategy, that can get kind of lost by reading how fast the order book is moving and how fast time and sales here is moving, it's okay to admit that. But if you are one of those students that has a tougher time reading this year, then it wouldn't make any sense for you to risk your money on it, right? I'd rather you risk your money on something that you have a lot easier of a read on, a lot easier of a grasp to read the order book on. All right, so we'll put it on our list. It's still very volatile in a good way, but I'd say this is more of a level 3 trading up. All right, so those were the big movers. We had a couple of the others too, like TRIT, DBGI. That's number 4 on the gainers list. Anyway, we'll go right from top to bottom, folks. See what else we got. The LC Trade Lending Club. I remember when this was back in like the 10s, the 20s, price area here. It's not as if we traded it every day, but this stock we have traded very frequently when it's come off of news or earnings. Obviously, a big jump up from the after hours yesterday. My belief would be earnings. I didn't check. For the close right now, it's just got too thin of an order book, also pretty expensive given the stock. Yeah, it looks like LC trading higher after the company reported better than expected quarter 3 sales results, and then they also raised guidance. That's a huge talking point. It's not just the earnings versus the EPS versus estimates or the sales versus estimates, it's the guidance too. So it looks like they raised fiscal year guidance on this stock, and that's the bigger talking point. So, I don't know, food for thought if you're looking for a swing trade on it, but for right now as a day trade, not really too particular about it. All right, so that brings us to the DBGI trade. DBGI, well, hey, it had a nice pre-market after the market opened up. Well, it made a very similar move actually to the IFRX where it just pulled back, it dropped off. But hey, if we could find some support, if this could break through a big level otherwise, on the way up, then I'd imagine there could be a pretty interesting opportunity. So that is what happened here. This ended up beginning to break over resistance that was holding pretty nicely from pre-market, well, support at 480. So once it broke 480 and really here 5, that's when it ended up really beginning to move up. So it ended up running pretty nicely from 485-ish all the way up towards just about 664. It got halted a couple of times on the way up, and on the last reopen here, well, it popped, it dropped, then it got halted on the way down. And you know what I say, well, what happens when a stock gets halted on the way down? That's a wrap. That's sheets. That's game over. So, it's so much so to say that I was in this trade. I was in from like 3 or 480 ish, and I took half out at a really good price, 605, but I had half in still. And when it reopened up off this halt, it popped, it dropped, it got halted here at 545, and I was still in on the second half of my position. So I was more hopeful at that point to see it reopen up, spike up a bit, and then I get out. Man, when this reopened up, this just dropped right down. I barely made profit on the second half of my position. I got out just over 5. Thankfully, I did at that point because, again, when a stock gets halted on the way down, much more often than not, we know it's going to happen right from that point. So, it dropped off. I think there was one little spike back up here, one little wiggle back up. But you know what? This ended up holding resistance perfectly, or near perfectly, right off its opening bell print price. That was at 529. From there, right back down it went. So, again, we're not trying to hold on to these positions all throughout the day and even further. If it's not going to keep moving upward in your direction, then, again, I said this in class yesterday, folks. It's a very simple line, but, the chart goes from left to right and stocks move up and down. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as it should be. It's not as if a stock does like a triple axle backflip in front of us. Stocks go up and down. The chart reads from left to right. If this thing's not going to keep pushing up and up and up, there's only one other way the stock's going to go. All right, talking about some familiar names, but although familiar, this stock's just well out of price range here. The OSTK stock, overstock. Pola, nice pop here heading into the early afternoon. Wow, I missed this. Ended up making like a pretty low volume, but big spike up from like 5:30-ish up towards 6:37 the high. I mean, again, another kind of common line I'll say here in this meeting, when the volume dies off, typically so does the stock. So, we are familiar with this stock. I think the stock is traded in at a similar trend as Sun W has in the past, and I think WWR maybe. Neither of these are really looking as active. All right, we'll see what else we got here. Just going down the gainers side to begin. CYH, not much happening there. EIGR, not a whole lot happening there either. I'll tell you what, there's definitely still some stocks that I'm not seeing here because number 50 on the gainers list is up 10 plus percent. So there's still definitely a lot more that's up percentage wise. Folks, if there's anything that you see that looks good, that's up, moving pretty well, then type it in the chat board. Let me know. Don't really see too many other familiar names here. Got Solo, SOLO. This one ended up making a nice run earlier going into the early afternoon. Pretty interesting. Fausto wanted me to look at this early, and I think either pre-market or really after the market opened up. And well, at that point, nothing was really happening on the trade, but I think it was on TV. It was being featured, I think, either on Fox or CNBC, whatever. It took a while to get the gears going, but man, it ended up making actually a pretty good move up. Topped off right around 380. Got about a 27,000 share iceberg order sitting up top there on the ask. You could see that up top at 380 right here. For right now, dropping off pretty steadily. I like the move given the afternoon, but with it dropping back down so sharply here, it's really got to begin to find some support, pop back up. Otherwise, I'm going to pass. AEHR, pretty familiar name. We've traded the stock over the last month on and off, and now really more off than on over the last week or so. We did call it out back on Tuesday this week where it broke an all-time high, but came back down. Here today, I guess it was trying to push back up until a moment ago, and now it's made it kind of a rounded top and pulling back down. So I'll pass on this for the afternoon. Maybe a stock to keep on your side list if it near all-time highs. Dead cat bounce opportunity. Perhaps you're an RFL squeezing up going into the early afternoon from 6 up to like 9. Right now, though, the stock just seems so flat and choppy, and the order book pretty thin. The volume again died off from the run up that we had. Familiar name here, TIGR. Is this all-time lows here? I don't know. Doesn't look like it. But this stock we ended up trading going into the end of last year, going into the beginning of this year, clearly, just given the trend up. For as much as it moved up, it was shortable, so it did drop off, and we had a couple of great days shorting this stock too. And, again, on and off, we've been following this stock across the whole year with this, pretty much at the lows of the day today. It broke below the low back from October. I don't know if it's officially a 52-week low. I don't think it is given this year. But nonetheless, it's dropping off heading into the afternoon. It's shortable. Got really good liquidity on the order book. I don't mind putting this on the main list for right now. We only have 2 stocks on the main list between this and the LCID. So hopefully we find more, and hopefully there's 1 or 2 I ended up either skipping over or just completely missing. So we'll see. Honestly, looking at the losers list here, I mean, the market's up. Looking at the S&P ETF, the SPY, only pushed up from the morning, bounced for us going into the early afternoon, and it's back to the highs. I wouldn't expect for there to be a whole lot on the losers list that's like a no name or something that moves with the market. Again, unless it's coming off of news or bad earnings, whatever it may be. Twilio and just too expensive. All right, folks, let me know if there's anything else you got from me here. I think that I just about got through all of the gainers and all of the losers list. Got Brian here saying Bitcoin dropping down again. Uh-oh. Well, it moved up going into this morning, so it broke back over 61. It's at 59. No sweat on this brow, Brian. We're all good there. And we'll talk about Bitcoin at least going into tomorrow afternoon. All right. Got a chat from Buster on YouTube. I don't know if this is a stock. Maybe if it is, maybe it's OTC. LIACF. Normally a a 5-letter stock like that would be OTC. It is. It's up 12%, but we don't trade the OTCs there, Buster. So we're not going to follow this. But you're calling out CXDC. That's a stock. Obviously, we ended up, calling out trading yesterday. The difference between this and the other one. This is not OTC. It's below $1, but it's a stock that's listed on the Nasdaq. It's a legitimate Nasdaq stock. So, we ended up trading it yesterday. Did it really nicely for us going into the market open. Bounced really well off $1. But at this point right now, even though it's at the highs here, I'm not as confident of this making a giant run up for us into the close. If I am wrong with that, and if this does, make a nice little pop off this high, then at a bare minimum, I would assume $1 to be the major resistance. All right, so I'm not going to put this on the main list for right now, but I don't know, maybe we'll check in with it later on if we need to. And got VUZI making a big pop. This just popped up on my Benzinga Pro news feed. So definitely going to put this on the main list. Hopefully this continues. VUZI. Let's see what the news is on this stock. Got no news, at least since Monday the 18th. I have no news on this stock since October 18th, like 2 weeks ago. So I'm not even going to relay that news to you unless if there's news going to be coming out here in a matter of moments. We'll copy and paste for all of us here in the chat board if so. All right, so VUZI at least makes the list for right now. This looks pretty interesting. Just checking my Benzinga Pro news feed though, otherwise seeing if there's anything else that I missed that's at the highs. I got GEVO here, GEVO, a stock that we are pretty familiar with live inside the trading room. It's up over 5%. It just broke a new high here right now. So, you know what? Not the fastest mover, but nice little pop. It's up, over 5%, and we are familiar with it. So for right now, I'll put this on the main list. All right, folks, I think that just about wraps it up here. Let me know if there's anything else up, down, left, right, more than 5% that I had missed, if any. Brian says VUZI voted to the top 100 places to work, according to Newsweek. That's pretty interesting. Is that the news that came out just now? I guess that could be a decent enough headline to see that type of pop, right? Nice continuation there. All right, so folks, I think that just about does it. One last one from Buster on YouTube. MNMD. That's a tongue twister stock for me. I had to say it slowly. But you know what? Really good call. Moving up really well here. It's up over 12+% and has everything that we would want to see in a stock, inexpensive, but on top of that, really good volume on the order book. So yeah, I missed over this one. I skipped over it, jumped over it. Maybe this was moving up as I was going from top to bottom. Good call. All right, folks, that just about wraps it up for me here. So for all of us on YouTube and Facebook Live, as always, I appreciate you sticking with me each and every afternoon, each and every day at least. I know I was in for Fausto earlier in the morning yesterday. If you have any questions, feel more than free to send over a quick email right to my email address, that is incorrect. That's what happens when you have fat fingers. There we go. There's my email address, josh@c2trading.com. Of course, I'm talking to all of those on Facebook Live and YouTube today. For all of us live inside the trading room, well, I'll be talking to you folks coming up later on this afternoon, right at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. I'll be back on the mic, folks. I'll talk to you then.